Welcome, everybody. It is me. It is the Cyber Warrior. This is Cyber Warrior Studios, and we are here for another amazing episode of Security Happy Hour. And I got an amazing show planned. We got a great guest coming on. And please don't forget, like, comment, subscribe, share, all those fun things, as well as super chats. And if you're watching this after the fact, team replay, tips and memberships are always appreciated. They help support the channel, help the growth, and help us try to do a little bit more advertising on our own to get the word out there and let other people know to come on. So with that being said, give me about 10 seconds and we'll be right back. And we're back. And like I said, we got a great show planned for you today. First and foremost, I want to thank Space Tacos for being here. There's some other people that are watching. So as you comment, please feel free to comment. Let us know you're here watching so we can interact with you, because questions are important and they help kind of guide the show as we go along and give us some topics that maybe we didn't get to think about at the time. But saying that, with me this evening, I have the one and only Jason Thatcher, founder of Breacher.ai. Jason, how you doing today, man?
I'm good. I'm ready for a beer. It's Friday.
Hey, it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Boom.
But I got to ask, so we know what the topic of conversation is going to be today, but always my first question to everybody that comes on this show, because what I like to do is not only put out the information and the topic we want to talk about, but help others break in. So can we start with just giving us a little bit of like how you got into cybersecurity, and more specifically with the onset of AI and what we're going to be talking about, deepfakes, what kind of led you down that path?
Yeah, that's a good question. I get asked all the time, like, how did you break into cyber? What tips did you do? And I'm going to say something really controversial. And so to be candid, I got lucky, right? I picked up the phone at the right moment, at the right time. And basically, a recruiter said, "What do you want to do?" And I was like, "I want to do cyber." And boom, that's how I got in. So super, super lucky is literally being at the right time, at the right place, and saying the right thing. But in my opinion, I think a lot of the entry roles are kind of saturated, right? So it's really hard to break into. Back in the day, it's easier, right? When there's like a deficit of basically like a surplus of jobs and not enough people to fill them. But today, the guidance I give is that you need to know the basics, right? And then specialize in a domain. Like pick one path and then tackle that path only, right? And the reason being is I see so many like entry level people, they try to boil the ocean, right? And learn like everything. And it's not the best way to do it, right? You just gotta specialize and focus and then go one path. Like it's not the same path for everyone. It's not just help desk, it's marketing, it's project management, it's operations, right? Lots of different roles for ways to break into it. So yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, and I mean, again, everybody's path is different. And for those that don't know, I talk about and kind of everybody's journey. Because everybody always asks the same question: how do I break into cyber? Right? That's how do I do it? That's on you. You can't walk somebody else's shoes. You can kind of try to emulate a little bit, but ultimately you've got to bring your own tools. You've got to cut down and really make your own path. You can't really follow on somebody else's because it never works out that way, right? You're going to hit obstacles that you can't overcome because you tried to do something the same way somebody else did, and they brought a different tool set with them, so they were able to overcome them where you can't. So you've got to bring the right tools and make your own path. But saying that, AI and deepfakes are the topic of conversation for today. And especially these days, I think that it has gone astray. I think the initial intent behind AI, the initial intent behind, I don't necessarily want to say deepfakes, but that type of technology it was well intentioned. And like most things in IT and cyber, got turned against us. So with that being said, in your experience in AI, do you feel like we're on the right path and we're just going to have to deal with the evil and the downsides that come with it? Or is there something else maybe that should have been thought of prior to really innovating this technology?
Oh man, that's a deep question right off the bat. I like it. I like it. Let's go deep. I think we're too late to be candid, right?
Mhm.
I think there's some amazing AI tech like ChatGPT is a game changer, right? It makes your job easier, but I don't think we thought about the consequences of such tech. It's so disruptive. Like it is the next basically iteration of like Web 3.0 or 4.0 or whatever the hell you want to call it, right? But it's going to lead to job displacement, right? There's people saying that it'll create new jobs and all that stuff. I don't really buy that talk track. I think it'll actually lead to a deficit in jobs. So,
Mhm.
and I think that vicious cycle that we're going to see is that people get laid off, and eventually down the road, people commit fraud because they can't find a freaking job in tech or whatever, right? So, yeah, I think we should have put a lot more forethought into it, and I think it's a little bit too late. This tech is already out there. There's no stopping it today. So, like legislation is just plain catch up for deepfake. It's yeah, I can go down a rabbit hole, but it's great, amazing technology, and it'll change everything we do and how we work. But there's going to be a lot of consequences that we haven't really thought through like in depth. So that's my take. I'm not a pessimist, but
The people that invented it, did they not have they not watched movies over the past, like, 30 years? Terminator, Judge Dredd, iRobot. I mean, the movies out there have shown what not thinking things through properly, can lead to. And I don't
Mhm.
know if maybe as humanity, people think, "Oh, I'm smarter than that," and won't fall victim, but let's be real, so does everybody else with everything else that has gone wrong in society is, "Oh, I know better." No, you don't. You're
Yeah,
gonna make the same mistakes over and over again.
yep. It's I'm curious what the next year will bring. I'm fairly confident of job displacement. That's my biggest fear for people. Is literally like being out of a job and trying to find work quickly. Right. That's I think
Yeah.
number one on my radar at the moment. Not to fear nukes, but I think that's
I mean, but you
relevant.
gotta think about it. There is gonna be new jobs, and there's gonna be people getting laid off. And I had a conversation, um, what was it, yesterday? No, it was earlier this week about, AI and even in the cyberspace. And I said, everybody's trying to eliminate the human factor, and you can't. Because no matter what you do and what you automate, take, for instance, CrowdStrike right now. Let's say, and we don't know, I don't work for CrowdStrike. I have no clue how their update process and their CI/CD pipeline and all this stuff works. But let's say, for instance, they had it all automated to where, hey, yeah, if it passes these checks, looks good to me, just push it. Where's the human intervention? Because you've put so many automated checks in place that you haven't put the human check. You were like, oh, we don't need them anymore. And so I think that I think we're trying to automate people out of the job for efficiency, but we're introducing more security issues at the same time.
Oh yeah, 100%, dude. Like 100%. AI is like a whole new battlefront, a whole new frontier with cybersecurity. Like there's so many things. And you bring up a really good point, right? Like people, so your average user is like terrified of deepfake. And what I keep kind of bringing back is it's not deepfake isn't a bad thing by itself, right? There's
No, it
always
gave us it gave us Princess Leia in Star Wars. I mean, she had passed on. She was no longer with us, and they said we're putting her in that movie no matter what. That's essentially what deepfake is. We're gonna put a CGI image overlay on top of a person, put them in the movie, and have them talk.
Mhm.
It wasn't her. We all know that she was no longer alive to film it. But I mean, there is good that comes from it.
Yeah,
But
it's basically it's a double edged sword, right? There's good, but there's a lot of bad too. And I'm a little like on the balance, I think it's a little bit worse than good for deepfake at least. But what people need to keep in mind is there's always that human element behind deepfake doing malicious things, right? Like AI by itself is not going out and trying to scam people or like defraud people. There's always like that human element behind it that's doing the deepfake, that's launching an attack and stuff like that. And that's a point that I try to get across just for your average user, right? Like you don't have to worry about deepfake by itself. It's like the bad people that are doing crap with it behind it.
Yeah. And we're seeing that to this day. So we could go back. Deepfake, it's not new, right? And the reason I say that is because I relate deepfake to the onset of things like Photoshop. How many people, when you think about damaging images, things that have damaged people's livelihoods and their careers, a lot of it came from Photoshop. I can take this face, put it on this body, and I can say you did whatever. And there are some people that are damn good at Photoshop and can make it look like a legitimate image. All the tones match and everything else like that. And it takes, another program to go in there, analyze it, and be like, oh no, this is off, this is off, this is the wrong shade, things like that. And even when you look at body image and things like South Park nailed it. Of I want to be the prettiest girl in school, so let's go to instead of working out, let's go to a Photoshop class and we'll fix this image and we'll remove all these, negative features. And this is my girlfriend now, but in reality, it's this. So, I think Photoshop and that type of image magic, movie magic was the original deepfake. It was the onset of what is currently going on in society today with what we see in magazines and on TV.
Yeah, I agree. It's been around since 2017, and that's what's so like surprising. It's like we've known about deepfake for 7 years, right? It's circa 2024, and here we are, and like a lot of our defenses are behind the ball for detection and like awareness training, right? So the thing is, like, it's gotten good from a commercial tool perspective, and that's a surprise. That's a shocker to everyone. Is it literally like over the past year? So when I first started doing this, right, I had like a home lab, and I downloaded like Deepfake Lab, and
Mhm.
messed around with it. I had a high GPU, got like the best video card I could buy, and then like after a week or two of doing this, I'm like, oh, I'm a freaking dumbass, dude. There's like all these cloud applications that can do it in like 30 seconds for like a buck or two, and I'm like, okay, dumbass, right? And I started playing with those, and audio is what really freaked me out, right? It's not video, it's not images or any of that. It's really audio is the one that really tipped me off. And it was at the end of MGM, right? So MGM just happened. We had that breach with phone call to help desk, and it was one application. It needed a couple seconds of audio, and it was hyper realistic. And I was like, "Oh shit, this is going to be bad news bears." So that was one of my motivations for doing this. Is like I couldn't think of another way to address the audio element, right? You got to think of people on their phones. There's no security tool that's going to stop that. Like someone picks up the phone, someone calls you, and pretends to be like, "Hey, a relative or somebody you know," and says, "Hey, I'm kidnapped. Send me money or whatever." And the only thing I can think of in that scenario was just testing and user awareness training. And I was like, nobody's doing this, so I just jumped into action. And it's been a wild ride so far.
I think that the craziest part is the ability to use. So over the past, and because of deepfake technology and things like and how advanced it's got, where you're able to basically stream live deepfakes, like you wouldn't even know. And we see it now. Look at the dude that was jumping a bunch of hoops and was actually in North Korea working for No before for so long. Like, so there's ways to do it. Um, and I just look at it as when I think about this deepfake technology, unless I am legitimately there somewhere to watch someone say something, I don't trust anything I see anymore. If it is a recorded video, and even if it's live, but I'm not in that audience to watch it live, it could be fake. We don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah, that's the point that we are. Like, that's the sad freaking state that we are. Is we're in a state where we have to trust less and it's verify more, right? It's like taking a step back and saying, "Hey, is what I'm seeing, is it real?" And it's getting so good so fast too. Like I can do a webcam injection with deepfake, right? it's okay. Like it's not the most believable thing or realistic, but it's getting better exponentially. But just a straight video, like I can take one photo, literally, that's all I need at this point, and in one video file, and boom, like it takes me a minute or two, and it's really good, like really really good. So yeah, it's we're in a state where you just have to slow down. You have to verify more and trust a little bit less, and that it sucks, but it's the truth, right? Um, and in verifying, like, so one of my biggest takeaways, like one of the things that I kind of preach is just having a simple safe word. Like if we're chatting back and forth, right?
Mhm.
And you're like, hey, I'm gonna send you a safe word, and then I join, and then basically I would use that passphrase to authenticate that I am who I am as an identity, like verification. But what's interesting is like as advanced as deepfake is, some of the most simple steps, like the basics, can defeat it, right? And that's what's really cool. And that's what I want to kind of preach is that you don't necessarily need like all these new tools, like they're great, and you need like layered defense, but simple steps like stopping and verifying and having a passphrase, very effective. Just process.
So what would be the process, or how can you combat something like that? And I want to, and actually, now that I'm thinking about this, I want to touch back on the legislation here in a minute. But um, how can you combat something like this when it's an interview or it's someone you don't know, so you've never had a passphrase or anything like that? And I mean, and when I think about passphrases in communication, I think about growing up when if your kids were out, you would teach your kids, hey, if a stranger walks up to you and says, "Oh yeah, my dad told me to pick you up," or to pick you up or whatever, um, you would ask him a question, and there was always, kind of like the military way of doing things. You had, you know, the phrase you give them, they answer with a phrase, and then you go about your merry way. Um, but when as now we're older, we're in, some of us are hiring managers, some of us are in situations where you have to have these discussions. How can you do that? How can you develop something in that way? And to the point of, like you said, the MGM breach, like just an audio call. Like, how do you get past that?
Two ways. I'll knock this down. Know before, right? Doing more verification, like more background checks. Like when I read, it was a pretty good fake. Like they forged all their documents. But doing like a layer of OSINT, like doing some more research on the individual. And I think in that case, honestly, having tech in place to detect deepfakes would be beneficial. So I say it's a little of both in that case. For MGM, literally, the failure was that help desk was never tested, right? Like against that scenario, is it it's mind-boggling, right? That it could have been avoided if someone had picked up the phone and called help desk and pretended to be like an admin and try to get credentials, and that could have stopped like $100 million breach. And that's mind-boggling to me. It's just that basics, right? In that case, it would have been, hey, what is your passphrase or what is your secret employee ID, just to do that kind of
Yeah.
secondary verification, right? To make sure you're actually talking to that individual. And that's a simple step that could have been taken and would have likely diverted that breach. But here's where it gets interesting. So David Kinney, right? If you watch his videos, MGM was actually done with artificial intelligence, right? So the I think it was Scattered Spider, if I'm not mistaken. I believe it was Scattered Spider, and they had to mask their accent when they called in the help desk to pretend that they were that admin, and they used basically AI voice modulation to disguise the fact that they were like foreign entities. So
Right.
very interesting. So that means that we've already had a ransomware attack that used both AI and social engineering already.
Eh, It's worrisome because when you think about it from a blue team perspective, and as much as I came up and loved offensive security and pen testing for so long, my heart lies with like monitoring and alerting and things like that. Like the blue team side has always been where I gravitated to more in my career. And I just think the more you try to stop something, the worse it gets for companies when you're implementing these things, right? Because it should be about business enablement. But then the flip side to that is how we're already behind the 8 ball. So how can you even catch up? By the time you catch up to implement one check to defeat it, and I know this sounds very cynical and like we're already beaten, but let's be honest, nothing's ever 100% secure. You're always going to find a way around it. And I think it's because we will forever be behind the 8 ball. There's no way to get ahead. And I think that as society and as people who like to innovate this technology, I like to think they have a God complex of like, oh no, I'm better than and better thou, and I can do better and make it. No one can beat this. Let's be real now. Yes, they can.
Oh yeah, yeah. We come from the same background. I come from MDR, SOC. I managed SOC operations. I love doing that. Like that was a blast. Like that's my forte. But the challenges that we're going to face is that an adversary, like for example, for emails, we've gotten really good at just blocking emails at the gateway, right? Like there's
Mhm.
some amazing security email gateway tools or security tools for email that are freaking fantastic, like abnormal security, checkpoint, right? Just a couple. And naturally, like if we're getting better at blocking this stuff, your adversary is going to figure out how to circumvent it, right? How to go
Yeah.
around it. And that's a challenge. That's why we will always be behind the 8 balls. We get better at one thing. The bad actor is always going to find a way to get around it. And I fear that deepfake is the next kind of get around, right? Like social engineering through phones, social media, audio, and stuff like that. That's their next get around because you don't have that layered defense. You don't have EDR, you don't have email, you don't have any of that stuff protecting end users when they're using like mobile phones or social media, right? So that's my fear. Like, and I think that's what we're going to see next is that iteration where deepfake is basically like the next phishing email. It's basically the same shit, exact same thing, but
Mm.
just evolved, right? But where it's scary, like where it really kind of terrifies me, is that with deepfake you can only deepfake a certain individual, right, for a scam or fraud or whatever, and that means that since you can only target one individual, like by creating a deepfake persona or impersonation, that means that the attack is going to be basically a spear phishing type of attack
Right.
towards the user. And those are very effective. And that's what's dangerous, right? Like if it's highly personalized and highly targeted, users are going to be more susceptible to fall for it. And that is my biggest fear is that we're going to see like hyper targeted deep fakes to individuals or small groups of users, and that's why I kind of push this, right? Is that we take that same approach as user awareness training towards that small targeted individual, right? The people that are handling controls are who you should focus on. So it's a scary new world. Deepfake is like I think this is phishing 2.0 going into 2024, 2025 is my hunch.
Yeah, and it's funny too because Curtis here. I've seen the phrase "intruders don't hack in" these days. They log in.
Exactly.
I mean, it's true. Um, but here's the funny thing is if I've always cared more about the individual people. And yes, I think as organizations expand, as they try to improve their risk footprint and their security infrastructure and their cyber teams and things like that, or lay them off altogether and think they don't need them, and then eventually, farm it out to an MSSP, whatever their choice. Um, I worry more about the individuals. I look at the careers getting hurt from people's images and likeness and faces being put in porn, being put in, compromising situations. It's already bad enough when you look at society and the blackmail and the things like that that go on within most of our systems. But now, between it used to just be you would have to worry about a photoshopped image. But if you got a video that was real, right? Videos were real. You knew that the person was the person. Now it doesn't have to be.
Yeah. Yep. And that's yeah. that's the problem with deepfake, right? So it's not just a B2B fraud; it's a B2C. It's a consumer-based fraud as well. Like, so your kids can be targeted. Your kids can be deepfaked. Like, I'm a father, right? I have 2 kids, and knowing that they could be deepfaked, like, that is freaking terrifying to me. So there's blackmail, there's extortion, there's virtual kidnappings. There's so much like bad that can be used with it towards the consumer, but also on the business side as well. And that's why I fundamentally believe that user awareness training is step number one, right? Because if you educate the users in the workspace, they can take that same education and apply it at the home front too, right? Like
Yeah.
example, having that protected passphrase or that secure word, that's something that I do with my family, right? So I know that if I ever get a phone call that says, "Hey, your daughter's been kidnapped," okay, what's the secret safe word, right? And then I know she's fine. So I think I fundamentally like so strongly believe that user awareness like is step number one, and it applies both at the home front and the workspace too. So it's critical in this fight. Like, it is literally the first line of defense. People say it's the last line of defense, and I don't buy that. Right? It's your users are actually exposed to this on their day to day, like on the home and in the workplace. There's no protective barrier for them. So arming them with information is number one. And where I get a little frustrated, right? People like I've gone into conversations and people are like, user awareness training is dead. It's a dead thing. Never gonna use it. I'm like, my mind explodes because it is the number one tool in this case. But um, in addition to that, right? So us, like when from our side, like we're cyber warriors or cyber defense, whatever you want to call it, right? It's our job to help those people understand like these threats and their day-to-day jobs. If you're in marketing and accounting, you're not thinking about cyber. You're thinking about
Right.
making payroll. You're making like a social media post to get your next blog or whatever, like on the website. Your mind is just not there. So it's really on us to, in the least invasive way, teach and educate, and then keep it kind of in their mind as well. So it's a hard thing to do.
Yeah, and one of the things that like I've always done to kind of alleviate that pain myself, right, is if I know someone, family, friend, whatever, I've talked to them, I have their number or have a different way to get a hold of them. Anytime somebody reaches out and claims one thing or another, I call direct
Hmm.
or get a hold of them that way. I did the same thing when the FBI got a hold of me for um, a lot of our data internally was leaked, in the dark web, and it was a part of a huge sting they were doing. So they were like, "Hey, we found all this," and I was like, "I don't buy it." So then I went and Googled the person and found like the official FBI number and like called that. I was like, "Oh, okay, so it is him." Okay, so now we can talk because now I know I'm talking to who I'm supposed to be talking to.
Yeah,
And I think that's one of the things that we really need to get around to. And we were talking about it earlier. When you're looking at deepfakes, it used to be trust by verify. Um, I lean more towards now verify before you even trust.
that's a really good way to look at it. So what you did is exactly what your average person needs to do, right? They need to take that step and verify. And I agree. I think we're almost at that point where, yeah, you have to verify before you trust. Also, it's a little bit of a. I like that a lot, and I would agree with that. Yeah, in some
What's going on,
situations,
Andy? Good to see you here finally. It's been a while. Yeah, it's so how do we take what we know and legislatively, how can we Im- impose some type of mitigation? Because we know bad guys are going to do bad guy things. There's no changing that. But when there's no legislation behind it, then even those on the line are going to be like, they ain't going to punish me. There's no law saying I can't do this, so let's go do it. So, like legislatively, how do we combat that?
yeah. So uh, uh, we're so behind the ball with legislation. So I'm down in Florida, and we actually got it right down here. Like we do very little, we do very little right in Florida, right? But we were ahead of the ball when we passed legislation for sex extortion and porn, and making it illegal, right? And I think that's the right answer. I think in my mind, the right response is having deepfake. When you deepfake someone, having that same um, law, like almost like a DMCA of your likeness, fall under DMCA claims, so that you can take action against it, right? So Scarlett
But by that
Johansson.
point, it's already out there, right? You've already damaged someone's reputation.
Mhm.
Look at people, and I'll even say it. Look at the women that have been their careers, their livelihoods have been destroyed by this type of technology, and so now if you don't have the funds to go into a PR type of deal, and you're literally just one person that someone decided to do some revenge porn type of nonsense, which revenge porn's already illegal, but they could just sit there and say, "Oh, well, it's not really her, it's AI generated." But like, so we're seeing these things. It's damaging reputations, it's damaging, the ability to get work, it's damaging the ability to get, spouses and significant others, like all this stuff. How can we actually legislate it?
That's the
I
problem,
don't know if
right?
a DMCA's I see your point to DMCA, but I don't think that can be the ultimate solution because you have to know about it just to file that claim.
Yeah. So I, I think we need legislation that helps after the facts, right? Beforehand, it's going to come down to forensics, right? Prove it. Like, how are you going to prove it? And that's a problem. Like, legislation is great, but you need that technical layer to basically say this is deepfake, this is not, and it's a really hard problem to solve from that aspect, right?
Yeah.
I think legislation that allows people to take action when they discover it quickly is really good as a reactionary thing, but I mean, bad people are going to do bad things, and um, I don't know if we can stop it for deepfake. I don't know. I honestly don't think this is a solvable problem, and I hate to say that, right? I wish I could say that we had like a silver bullet or some way to stop deepfake and people using it for malicious intent. I don't think we do, unfortunately, right? And I hate to say that, but it's just a sad state that it is, right? These tools are out there; they're open source. Um, so like another thing is like there's there's things like watermarks, right, that are being put forward that may help. I think it's great for like social media and misinformation, but I think that actually some of these steps are actually going to backfire on us and might actually do more harm than good. Watermarking, especially, like watermarking is great for social media misinformation. So you can look at a video and say, okay, that's fake. I know that, right? Great, cool. But you put yourself in this false safety net where you're looking for like a watermark or some indicator that it's a deepfake. And then when a bad actor has like an open source tool which does not apply any sort of watermark or trace or anything, that consumer is going to have that false sense of security and they're going to fall victim for it. So it's kind of like it's a double edged sword. There's a lot of um, like
I mean,
a
but
lot.
even LinkedIn right now, my thumbnails for these videos, nothing's AI generated. Literally, I took one image, brought it in from Adobe Stock, took another image, brought it in from Adobe Stock, created my own, throw our likenesses up there from photos that just cut and paste. And LinkedIn's like, hey, this looks AI generated, so we're gonna mark it as AI. And I'm like, but it's not. Like,
False.
okay, cool. I guess I'm that good that I can make it look like AI did it. But um, but yeah, I mean, I see your point. Again, to me, it just comes down to um, and Angie said it, and we talked about it a little bit earlier. Would legislation really help if the bad guys or girls don't care? And I don't think it would. I mean, they're still going to do it. We still have adversaries out there to this day that are utilizing this type of technology or ransomware and everything else. We can legislate it till we want, and they're not going to care.
Exactly. Yeah.
Killing people is illegal, yet people still kill people. Don't know what to tell you. Like, there's only so much you can do.
Yeah.
However, again, to my point, it's a mitigating factor. What I do think is from a security perspective, developing the technology that you cannot eh, upload any video that is deepfake. If it is
Mm,
an AI generated video, especially in the context of um may present people that aren't actually there in situations that they may or may not want to actually be presented in, like there should be legislation there from that standpoint, right? Once the technology comes around to be able to detect it on the fly, right? Where you upload a video, it scans it first and says, "Nope, this is a deep fake. We don't want it." Um, I think at that point we can put some legislation around the companies that produce this type of content, but I don't think we could ever. You're never going to get rid of people trying to do it.
yeah, yep, and that's the problem, right? It's there's always gonna be bad people. Bad people are gonna do bad stuff, and that's an unsolvable problem. But I love that idea, like having like a detection layer for uploads, like YouTube and stuff like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a good suggestion. There's a lot of tech out there that detects deepfake, and I'm gonna shoot you straight, right? It's some of it's not that great to be candid from what I've seen, and then some of it is good, some of it's very promising, but it's still I feel like a lot of it is playing catch up to being able to
it's
detect
still in
this.
its infancy,
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
and man, it's such a touchy topic because I can even there's things I could touch on that'll probably get me kicked off of here, but um, when I think about it, I think about any of the content we see to this day that presents itself as news or interviews. Like that is where, other than the adult content aspect of it and the revenge porn and that type of stuff, it's the social aspect of it. Of hey, oh yeah, this person said this when really they were in an entire differently state when that was recorded, and you're using a background from like some other area to present this information that never happened. But because of deep fakes, now people are believing it. Oh
mhm.
yeah, he really did say that, or she really did say that, or whatever. And it's like, but did they? Did they
Yeah,
really?
yeah. It's so an interesting thing that we've seen is actually a shallow fake, right? Like there's a deep fake, but this shallow fake is like pausing or like emitting frames to show that people are doing something, and it's taken out of context, right? It's misinformation. But yeah, shallow fakes are cheap and easy to do, and we've seen like evidence of those happening too. There was one in Oregon, which is really interesting. So out of all the deepfakes, so two things to keep in mind, right? These sort of scams and attacks, right, are happening much more often than are making it in the news. A lot of companies are not coming forward and divulging it. No before was amazing that they divulged that a North Korean person made it into their organization, right? But there's one in Oregon. This is a couple months ago, where some scammer went after like a really small nonprofit, and it was like $1,000 scam. Like it was almost nothing. But they did a shallow fake, and it was super believable. If you saw the video, they basically took the voice, they removed the audio file, cloned it, manipulated it, but the video itself was intact. It was just basically massaging the audio file to sound more convincing. But the fact that a scammer will go after a nonprofit in Oregon for a grand using deepfake or a shallow fake, it goes to show like if no before it is being targeted, if a nonprofit organ is being targeted, anyone can be a target for deepfake, and that's kind of scary too if you think about it. Like it's not just financial institutions. This thing is pretty broad, like across the board.
Everyone's a target. I mean, how? Let's go back to the what the 15-year-old that hacked T-Mobile and got into all of the Sidekick networks and leaked everything from there. And all he did was call up the help desk and say, "Oh yeah, I'm so and so. I lost my password."
Mm-hmm.
Like, think about it now, where you have the ability to do voice modulation and all of this voice generation on the phone. Dude, you can call any phone company and get whatever you want at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. So I agree, and like, so I don't know. Do you get scams? Like, do you get SMS scams on your phone?
Oh, I get them all the time, and I
Okay.
laugh. Like, every once in a while, I wanna send a link to, like, one of my Linux boxes just to see what it opens up. I don't
So
wanna do it on my phone because phones are not secure at all in the slightest, and I'm like, I wanna send this to my Linux box eventually."
I got to find a way. So lifelong goal of mine is to reverse scam a scammer, like to scam a scammer. I have not pulled it off yet, but I am hell bent on doing it. Like at some point, and actually getting money back from a scammer. I don't know if I'll ever
That
pull
would
it
be
off.
gold. Oh, I
I
need to try that one day.
That is my ultimate goal, like for real. So I've developed an alter ego. His name is Hans Talabia, and I will just mess with him for like an hour because I'm spiteful and I have nothing better to do with my tongue. And we'll go back and forth. And but it's interesting, like so on these scams, they're getting more personalized. Is what I'm noticing. Like I got one the other day, and they actually spelled my name correct, and it was like, "Hey, Jason Thatcher, call me back at this number," right? Or it's like an employment scam. And my theory, my hunch is they are scraping LinkedIn or
Yeah.
sales navigator tools and then getting that personalized information. And that's, again, that's why I'm so freaking terrified. Like these scammers are getting more personal information about you, right? That means it's going to be more hyper targeted with deepfake too. So it's a, man, like I'm worried about the next year of just super targeted scams.
We're gonna see it before the end of the year.
Oh yeah, I guarantee it. I guarantee it.
Um, eh, it's an election year. We're gonna
Yeah.
see many deep fakes before the end of the year.
Oh yeah. I can. I will bet anyone. I will take this bet that Russia does mass deepfakes to try to sway the election in one way or the other. I can almost guarantee that will happen.
Oh, I wouldn't even say Russia. It's gonna be our own people. I
I
legitimately think it's gonna be our own people. And
I
I ain't even gonna go to the conspiracy route. It'll be smart people in positions of I want to sway an audience, so they will send a video to some massive social media creator and be like, oh look, this was just said and put it out there.
yeah.
Like it'll be our own. We want to blame every other country for the shit that we do.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
It already happened. Like the Biden robocall, right? Like the guy that he got paid like $100 or $200 to do a deep fake of Biden talking on the phone and then use like I think it was a marketing tool and did like a robocall to a bunch of people and said, "Hey, don't go vote." Right? We've already seen it happen. It's going to happen again for sure. FCC, I think the FCC put out guidance or a policy or legislation says like heavy fines for doing that, and that's good. I think dissuading people, knowing that the penalty will be so heavy, is a good
But you got
step.
to catch them first.
Exactly, you got to catch them, and you got to prove it too. And that's. I mean, hey, was this deep fake? Prove it. So you need forensics tools that actually says, yeah, it's a deep fake or not. It's interesting. I could talk about this stuff for hours. But one thing to keep in mind though, like it's not just misinformation. It's not just scams. Like we're seeing in one case where a ransomware attack was being used, and I can tell you, like we've had companies approach us, and they're going after sensitive data as well. Like they're targeting like trade secrets.
Yeah.
Like KnowBe4 is a good example. Like what was their motivation? It was to get in and to get data or get intel out of that organization.
Homie should have waited a little while because he started dropping malware like it was nobody's business apparently on day one.
I am floored with this. Like, I have so many questions. Like, how did he get past the HR interview? Was it deepfake video? I'm assuming yes.
Again, my thing with it is even with that, I don't care how he got hired. We again deep fake photos and videos and audio. I just chuckle at the fact that my guy could not last more than a day without being like, you know what? We're just gonna drop 1,000 pieces of malware on this machine to navigate. Like, dude, at least play it out. Like, are you the world's worst freaking hacker right now?
I know. I was shocked at that. That dude was jonesing or fiending for something like. But yeah, that's just dumb, dude. Like day one. I good kudos for KnowBe4. Like they sandboxed his environment, so apparently like a new hire they put in sandbox mode. That's freaking brilliant. Like that's such a good
Yeah.
move. And they were super like transparent about it, which helps everyone understand like how these are happening too. But yeah, like bad job trying to hack someone by dropping malware on day one. Like how freaking dumb do you have to be? It's hilarious
Now
to me.
the only flip side to that is, and um, give it a freaking week at least. The only flip side to that is, and it's because how I always thought of ransomware, and I was right from the moment it came out, at its inception, is distract and get what you want while you're distracting them. So with ransomware, the whole point is not that most people don't intend, I don't think, to actually get the ransom. They know a lot of companies are going to bring out DR plans and stuff like that and kick them out. It's all the data they got while they were dropping the ransomware. That's what they got from it.
Mhm.
And so, so I think this potentially could have been a distraction scenario. They already had two people there. So we're going to use one as the fall guy, drop all this malware, distract from what's really going on.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Diversion. Yeah, that's your
I,
fall guy.
exactly. And because he's already, it's been known that he wasn't actually in the area, right? He is using VPNs and Raspberry Pis and all this to make it look like he was in the US. I think it was. So how you going to get him?
Yeah.
Worst you can do is fire the guy. Like how you can't arrest him if he's somewhere that you're not allowed to arrest him from.
That's where it got interesting. So if you read the article, like they shipped the laptop to a location that was like a little iffy, is my understanding. It was
Yep.
actually like a VPN farm or like a hosting farm that they plugged it into, and that should have been like a red flag. I think is basically like again taking that step to slow down and verify like all this information. Why is this laptop going to this location that's a little shady, right? Like it again, like is that a technical control or is that a process and procedure? You know, like had they verified it a little bit more, I think process may have caught that. But I mean, having that layer of defense again, process, procedure, and then technology, the tech stack being the last line of defense versus process and procedure. So I don't know,
Yeah.
it's very interesting, but I can guarantee that there's more companies that have had that and probably still have someone from North Korea sitting on their laptop somewhere. I can almost guarantee there's more organizations that have been infiltrated. There's actually a report that came out today that that North Korea was going after basically anything nuclear related. So like data or secrets or anything
Yeah.
nuclear tech. Same concept is like they're going hard after that at the moment to try to get information to mature their program. So it's all fascinating. But at the end of the day, it's like us versus the bad guys and what we can do.
Yep.
But I
So
think
we got a question here. What if we had a special LSB that all computer generated imaging or sound software had to encode into a product from it? Jack, your verbiage is a little off to me. What pixel tracking? Yeah, a special LSB, lowest significant bit that all computer generated imaging or sound software had to encode into a product. Oh, okay, I get it now. When your least significant digit. Okay. So you have a bit that's in anything computer generated, imaging or sound software. It is mandated that it has to encode an LSB into every file.
I like it. It's similar to watermarking, in my opinion, right? Like, are the bad people going to like open source tools? Can you ensure that that's included, right? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. So it's a great approach. Is like how can you identify the original source as authentic, and how can you trace it back? Like
And here, I get what he's saying though, because think about it this way: anything legitimate will have that bit.
that's true. That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah. That's one potential approach. Yeah.
And so if you're
Um,
using open source or AI generated like type of stuff where you're trying to do something that's not legitimate, right? So if we want to hide from it, we're going to develop something that removes that bit or doesn't mandate it. And so now I can do whatever I want and you can't figure out where I created it, how I created it, or what I did, which just gives me more reason to doubt that it's legitimate.
yeah, yeah, that's a good point. So my thought would be, can an adversary get around it? And would it be visible to your end user too? Like, for example, if it's a video, would a visual check be able to see that it's been
No,
altered or its original source, right?
no, it would just be a bit in the code.
Yeah.
Like that's Jack said, think stego. So think steganography. To me, it's
Hmm.
a bit in the code. Every program you use to open this up should be looking for this bit. And actually, that could be the workaround. Instead of it would have to be a two-prong approach. You'd have to start requiring the bit by your editing software, and then programs like Windows Media Player, VLC, anything like that would be required to only show videos with that bit.
Mm.
Then you can't get around it. I mean, you probably could. Let's be honest. Everybody can find a way around everything, but and that bit will show what software created it and when it was created. Like it would hold the metadata. And again,
Yeah,
there's always ways around. We all know this.
yeah, like a timestamp. Or like, yeah, that's one approach definitely. Yeah, good question, Jack.
I think it's possible. I think it's plausible. Again, though, all we can do is mitigate and lower the risk footprint. You can't eliminate. I
Yep.
like that too. Canaris. So Angie said it. Canary token tracking that is going to generate a lot of log data, or look for it and mourn if it doesn't exist. From Jack. Yeah, both of those are valid.
Yeah, yeah. It's like I think of like a good analogy. Almost like an email warning banner, right? Like this email's from outside your organization. It'd be like a
Yeah,
warning banner that says like, "Hey, we can't authenticate the source for this media file or video." Right?
yeah.
Same concept. Yeah, it's a good approach. Um,
And
figuring
if
out
you
like,
do have the source, I would even go as far as to put what the source is.
yeah, trace
So
back.
think about it this way, right? You've got your AI generated videos now in deepfakes, which come from AI. Now, to my knowledge, and again, I don't know very much about how to create these things, but you cannot utilize something like Adobe Premiere to create a deepfake. To my knowledge, you would need a different piece of software that creates a deepfake, and then you implement that deepfake and lay it over into Adobe Premiere. So should have technically two bits. And if at any time any deepfake technology was utilized to create it, that would show.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Interesting. Yeah, it'd be figuring out what that standard looks like across like all the players too, to make sure that like is Meta going to play nice with Google and so forth. But yeah, that'd be like a standard that can be enforced across the board. It's a good idea. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and again, if it's and Angie said it, if it's prevented in the software, it's going to be cracked to allow it. You're not wrong. Again, everything's just a mitigating effort. There's no way to be 100% perfect all the time. It's just a matter of thought, tossing ideas out there to find ways to do it. But infinite improbability AI, he says, sounds like the slippery slope. Next thing you know, China will require backdoors to all software to have backdoors for your safety. I understand the premise, but I don't think in this instance that's the case. I don't. I would need AI some more data behind why you think this is a slippery slope, just by introducing some type of bit that lets you know what software things were created on and if it's legitimate.
Love that comment. They already tracked everyone. They already know everyone.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
they got AI facial tracking all throughout their cities.
Yeah, they have like a social credit system. That's freaking crazy, dude. Like facial recognition and like social score for what you do.
We have a social score here too. It's just known as we're going to go out there and talk a lot of bad things about companies that do one thing I don't like, and so now let's tank them. We still have a social credit score. It's just different. It's not run by the government. It's run by the people. So I don't know, man. We got about 5 minutes left, and I know you and I can go on and on about deep fakes and the technology behind it. But if you were to really look at, again, two questions. The first one is, do you think this type of technology should have ever been invented? We already know Pandora's box is open; it already was. But in your mind and your heart, do you feel that it should have ever been invented or innovated? So we're back to Minority Report again. Jack, don't go there. And the second thing is, now that we have opened Pandora's box, is there any way? Can it get any worse? And with this type of technology, I mean, we've talked about a lot of the good and bad that's out there. Could it? What would be the inevitable end game?
That's a good question. I'm very torn on this, right? I never would ever want to say don't do tech, right? Like tech is amazing and people innovating and creating new things, right? I would never want to prevent that. So I'd say yes. I mean, there are some good applications for deepfake. People that have lost their voice can use it to basically to save or preserve their voice. So outright banning it, no, I don't think I'd go that far. But I think that there's much worse applications for deepfake than good. I think like 96% of deepfake is like it's porn, right? Like, and a lot of it's non-consensual, like porn. So I think outlawing that is good. It's a weird thing. Like there are some good applications, but I think the bad definitely outweighs the good when it comes to deepfake. Um, so that's my take. And then I think it's going to get much worse, right? The one saving grace that we have right now for deepfake is there's not an easy, great way to combine both video and audio voice modulation in real time. So, but I think we're close to it, right? Once that sort of tool becomes commercially available, I think we're looking at a whole next level of scams and fraud. And the problem is like it's in a consumer's hands, right? Like deepfake wasn't a big problem in 2017 because you had to have skill, you had to have GPU to do it. It was technically challenging, but we've lowered that barrier now that people can do it. Anyone can do it. Like it's not necessarily like I hate the stereotype of a hoodie wearing hacker, right? But it's not a bad actor. It could potentially be your neighbor next door doing a deep fake or trying to scam someone, right? And I think it will get much, much worse. We're starting to see the beginning of what I think is of it coming to North America. Like if you look at deepfake, it is predominantly like the majority of them have been in like Hong Kong, East Asia, Vietnam, and it's slowly making its way over here. So they've had a much bigger problem like in India, and it's now starting to come to our doorsteps too. So I think we're on the cusp of where we'll see many more of these types of attacks.
Yeah, I don't think it's going anywhere. It's going to get worse. And again, I'm a cynic. I think everything is going to continue to get worse until eventually the system just can't take it anymore and it dies. And all we can do is prevent it for as long as possible. And that's kind of where I'm at is just doing the best that we can to prevent, and be ready to react when necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Again, nothing's 100% secure, and people need to realize that. No one is that good. No technology is that good. And it's probably one of the reasons no company, no cybersecurity company will ever sponsor me because I will never claim that they are perfect 100% of the time. You will never hear those words come out of my mouth.
Oh yeah,
No software is ever 100% guaranteed.
100%. Yep, I see that, and then I instantly think bullshit. Right? If someone says that, "Hey, we stop ransomware, we prevent ransomware," my mind immediately says bullshit. Right? Like there's no silver bullets. There's nothing that's infallible. And even if we did get even close to it, bad guys are going to figure something else out. So I agree with that. And 100%, right? There's always a way to get in.
Hey, where there's a dollar sign, there's a way.
Exactly. Well,
So,
cool,
but
dude.
anyways, Jason, it's been good having you on, brother. Feel free. We can hang out in the back after for a little bit. But otherwise, to everybody else out there, there's been another amazing episode of Security Happy Hour, Cyber Warrior Studios. I am the Cyber Warrior. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share. And always, super chats, tips, and all that stuff is always appreciated. Plus, you can head to the website, cyberwarriorstudios.com, for amazing merchandise and other ways you can support the show. Now, saying that, I love you all. Take care. And I'll see you in 2 weeks because I'm off next week. Have a good one.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.